Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read S6 6100 Gazing at Stars Stories from Asia. My beloved charioteer. Story from India. I smile as I hear them at last. The sounds I'm waiting for. A rush of footstep, the bang of bathroom door. I draw in my breath sharply as the sound crashes through the silent house. And a minute later, another bang. And then, bare feet, running towards me. You shouldn't bang the doors that way, I say sternly. You might wake Mummy. She sits opposite me, with her legs crossed on the low wooden chair, hair untidy, cheeks flushed and warm. Oh, she won't wake up for hours yet, she says cheerfully. Have you had your tea, Aji? Our daily routine. I can never confess to her that I have had a cup an hour earlier. This is a joy that I wait for her. No, I've been waiting for you. Have you brushed your teeth? She makes a face. I'll do it later, she says, trying to sound casual. You do no such a things. Go and brush them at once. Only today, Aji. From tomorrow, I promise. I'll brush them first, she says, persuasively. Nothing doing. I try hard to be firm, but I can't deceive her. She knows I'm on her side. She lowers her voice to a whisper. Mommy won't know she's sleeping. Now, of course, she leaves me no choice. I have to be firm. She goes unwillingly and is back so fast that I have to ask, did you really brush properly? Show me. Look, she is laughing naughtily, and I have to smile back. Now, tea for me, she says. No, I say, tea for me, milk for you. In the end, as always, we find a solution that pleases both of us, and her tea is a pale brown. Suddenly, we realize how loud our voices sound. We look at each other guiltily, thinking of the sleeper, and speak more quietly. Happiness can mean so many things to so many people. For me, it is this, the beginning of a new day with this child. We talk of all kinds of things, but too soon it is time for her to go to school. Bathed and fresh, she sat down. When she's gone, silence descends on the house. Silence that'll not lift until she returns. I had got used to this silence in the last 7 years. It had never seemed terrible to me. It was a friendly silence, filled with the ghost of so many voices in my life. My younger brother, my aunt who loved me when I was a child, my two baby sons who never grew up, and even my daughter, Artie as a child, who seems to have no connection with this thin, bitter woman who now shares a silence with me. But since she came back here after the death of her husband, Madhab, the friendly ghosts have all gone. It is late before Artie wakes. I have had my bath, and I'm halfway through cooking lunch when I hear her moving about. I take the cooking pot off the fire and put on the tea. By the time tea is ready, she comes into the kitchen. Wordlessly, she takes a cup from me and drinks as if she has been thirsty for hours. Then she pushes the cup back to me, and I pour out some more. I too say nothing. Earlier, I used to ask, slept well, and one day she put down the cup with a terrible hand and said, slept well. No, I never do that. I haven't slept well since Madhab died. I'll never sleep well again all my life. I have to take something every night so that I can close my eyes for a few hours. Now never ask me again if I slept well. 9 months, I carried this daughter of mine in my body. I felt within me every beat of her heart, every movement of her limbs, but I knew that my pains and shocks could never hurt her. She was so well protected. Even now, she is protected from my pains. Even now, I have no protection against her pains. My suffering is of no use. I can't help her. I can only be clumsy and make things worse. Why didn't you let me know earlier? She asked me angrily when she came home after her father's death. Don't tell Artie yet, he had told me. I don't want to frighten her, especially not now. Habits of obedience die harder than any other. I hadn't dared to inform Artie, and the next day he had another attack and died instantly. 3 months later, the pretty was born. She never saw her grandfather. Who is that Aji? She asked me once. Seeing his photo, your grandfather pretty. My grandfather, she said thoughtfully. And what was he of yours? What was he of mine? Innocent question released a flood of my feelings within me. My husband, I said at last, bluntly, as I get on with cooking lunch, I wonder whether today Artie will like what I'm cooking, whether she will enjoy her food and eat well. I know she will not, but the hope is always in me. Just as I hope that one day she will talk and laugh again. But on the day when she had left, her laughter too loud for the quiet house, she had frightened me. What is it? I asked her, wondering whether to smile, to laugh, to respond in some way. Look at us, a pair of widows. Widows, I remember my mother, who was one. She had a shaven head, wore only coarse red saris, and no jolly all her life after my father's death. And I think of Artie, who for days forgets to brush her hair or even wash, and then one day dresses in her best and wears flowers in her hair. But it is Artie whose face has dried up, look of a desert. Life has been cruel to her. It was a father whom she loved, and he died while I lived. It was her husband whom she loved even more than the child. It was he who died, while Pretty is left to her. Children are more sensitive than we think. They understand so many things we think they don't. Otherwise, why would she have said one day to me, Aji, can I sleep in your room at night? I'm old and gray and have lost all that I loved in life, except these two persons. But at her words, my heart jumped in happiness. However, I held back my joy and asked her, why, Pretty? I like to. You can tell me stories at night, and there are so many things I suddenly remember at night and want to tell you, but mommy is with you. The child's face looked sad, but Aji, if I try to talk to her, she says, go to sleep, Pretty, and don't bother me, and she never sleeps at all. She just reads and smokes. Now I don't like that smell. Quiet, Pretty, I said. Suddenly I'm afraid that a high, clear voice might be overheard. Yes, artist smokes all the time now. When I was a child, it was considered wrong even for a man to smoke, but today, I wouldn't mind my daughter smoking if I thought it brought her happiness, but it doesn't. Smoke she creates is full of bitterness, and I cannot help her. I can only try to look after her body, such a small thing to do, but even in that I fail. She's thin and delicate looking. Most of the time, she just goes round in an old dress, her hair tied up with a rubber band. One day, Pretty saw an old photo of her and said sadly, my mommy was so pretty, wasn't she, Aji? Little girl's pride in her mother made me angry with the Artie. She seems like a child who's just sucking because she doesn't have what she wants. I want to ask her, an annoyance promised us happiness for a lifetime. Why don't you go out? I asked her once. Where? There is nowhere I want to go. Everywhere I see couples, I can bear to see them. I could murder them when I see them talking and laughing. This talk amazes me. I can't understand her. My niece once told me of something she had read in an American magazine about children of 11, 12, 13, and 14 who are guilty of horribly violent crimes, often for no reason, and I wondered at the time, what kind of parents can they be who give birth to such a monster? Now I know better. The accident of bus can be cruelly deceiving. We think that our children are our own, that we know them, but often they are strangers to us. Still, we can never escape the responsibility of being parents. If my daughter is so empty that she can hate people who are happy, the fault is to some extent mine. These bitter thoughts do not often occupy me. I have my work in the house. The quiet routine of my day brings calm to my soul. Now that the children is with me, the day is full of meaning. I wait as eager as a child myself for her to return from school when she has a holiday. I don't know who is happier, she or I. But when she, my daughter, and her mother comes to us, we feel guilty and hide our happiness. Do you remember your father? Artie asked her harshly one day. Father, there was a moment's hesitation. Of course, I remember. I don't think you do. You never speak of him. The child stared at her with a frightened face, feeling guilty, but not knowing why. And when Artie left us, she burst out crying and held me tightly. I was full of pity, not for her, but for Artie, who could turn happiness into wrong. But I can say nothing to her. She has never shared anything with me. Now she hides her sorrow like a dog in its bone. She guards it jealously and will not let me approach. And I have kept my distance. It was only in my imagination that I held her in my arms when she was a child. Only in my imagination that I shared happiness and secrets when she was a young girl. And now I help her to bear her sorrow in the same way. Look, I tell myself, I say to her, pouring some water into my cupped palms. Look, I will say, as the water falls through my fingers, leaving nothing. You cannot hold on. You will have to let it go. But I know I'm deceiving myself. I have no courage to speak. I'm only a foolish woman who has never known how to win anyone's love. Prettiest love, that's a gift of heaven. It's a ray of sunshine that lights up the dark corners of my life. For Artie was always a father. Even now she spends the whole afternoon in what was his room. It is 7 years since he died, but the room is unchanged. I have kept everything as it was. I dust and clean it carefully, but strangely, in spite of this, it looks as if no one cares about it. Bridget sometimes looks the same. She is well fed and well dressed, but even so, there is an uncared for look in her eyes at times, which fills me with sadness. Now I can hear Artie moving round in his room. Even after his death, he can give her something I can. The thought hurts. Hurts? It's like having salt rubbed into an open wound. Suddenly it is unbearable, and I go and open the door of his room. She's just sitting on his chair, her feet on his table, smoking and staring at nothing. She hears me and turns round quickly. I have never disturbed her until now, and with the movement of her feet, she knocks down his photograph, which stood on the table. Now it lies on the floor, face down. She rushes to pick it up. The glass has cracked, and long pieces of glass lie on the floor. She looks up at me. I'm sorry, mother. I'm sorry. I stare down at the photograph and say nothing. I'm sorry. She repeats, don't look like that. I'll get it fixed tomorrow. I promise I'll do it. No, don't. My voice sounds hard, and she looks at me in surprise. I don't care if it's broken. I never want to see it again. She looks up at me amazed, frightened. What's wrong with you? What's happened to you? Nothing. I'm all right. But I don't want it. Let it go. What are you saying? What is it? Let it go, let it go. I repeat, we're speaking whispers. Can he hear us? Can he hear me? I don't understand you. Let what go? He's my father. She is still kneeling there on the floor, holding the photograph in her two hands. Yes, your father, but what was he to me? The day he died, I let him go like that. Now I make the movement I had imagined, putting my hands together like a cup, and then separating them. She stares at my hands with fascinated eyes. There was nothing left, nothing. But I am his daughter. And yours? Am I nothing? Am I? She's beating fast. Breathing fast, her eyes hot and angry. What are you then? I ask her. You just smoke and a bit of ash, like those cigarettes you smoke, like my married life. Pain laid its claws on her face, but I forced myself to go on. What have I to lose? Nothing. Only the child's love, and this cannot destroy that. In fact, I have a feeling that she is with me now, giving me strength for the battle, encouraging me to fight, my beloved charioteer, my guide, like Lord Krishna was to Arjuna before the battle of the Kurukshetra. He was a father, I go on, but what was he of mine? I lived with him for 25 years. I know he didn't like stones in his rice. I know he liked his tea boiling hot and his bath water only just warm. I know he didn't like tears. So when your baby brothers died, I cried alone and in secret. I combed my hair before he woke up because he didn't like to see women with loosened hair. And once a year, he brought me two saris, always colors that I hated. But he had never asked me, and I never told him. And at night, still kneeling on the floor, holding the photograph, her hair falling about her face. Don't, she cried. Don't tell me, don't. And with each word, she bangs the photograph and the glass breaks again and again. Now he's openly on view to both of us. But there is no pity in me. It's not the dead who need your sympathy, it's the living. I don't want to hear, she said. How innocent she is in spite of her age, her education, her books. Her marriage and a child who can still be hurt by knowledge. It reminds me of the day I realized she had grown up. I tried to explain. She cried out then in the same way. Don't tell me, don't. This is another kind of growing up. When you learn to see your parents as people. At night I go on, pitiless, scarcely dare to breathe. I was just so terrified of disturbing him. And once, I don't know how I had the courage, I asked whether I could sleep in another room. Next day, his mother, your grandmother told me very plainly about a wife's duties. Must always be available, so I slept there, afraid to get up for a glass of water, scared even to cough. When he wanted me, he said, come here, and I went. When he finished it, if I didn't get out of his bed fast enough, he said, you can go, and I went. I know these things should not be said to her, his daughter and mine, but I'm like a river in flood. I have no control over myself. And one day, when you were here, you and Madhav, I heard you both laughing and talking in your room. I stood outside and wondered, what could you be talking about? I felt like I did. When I was a child, unable to read, looking at a book, I had hoped that one day he would say he was pleased with me. That day I knew it would never happen. I would always be outside the room. I would never know what goes inside, and that day I envied you. My own daughter, you hear me, Artie? I envied you. When he died, I felt like Pretty does when school is over and the bell ring. Artie, you understand? Why am I also crying? We look at each other. She looks at me. Never seen me before. Then, with a sudden movement, she jumps up and stares angrily at me. Whose is the victory? Whose? I have made her look at me, but what if she doesn't like what she sees? My heart shrinks at the thought, and as she moves back towards and starts running away from the room, from me, I realize what I've done. And then I hear the cry, Aji, I'm home. Where are you? Here. I call back loudly, I'm here. The end.